Hi there, my name's Jay. I'm with AminoZ, and today I'm going to be talking about the fat burning zone. This is something that I'm particularly passionate about because the fat burning zone is one of those myths that has been propagating the industry for years and years and years, ever since I think it's the 1980s. And it's something that really needs awareness created around it so we don't get sucked into this concept that we must stay within the fat burning zone to burn the maximum amount of fat. So let's go into a little bit of background behind it. Now, the fat burning zone is something that you'll see all through gyms. You'll hear personal trainers recommending it. You'll even see the latest cardio equipment. It has it printed on there saying the fat burning zone is within this range and then the cardiovascular zone is within this range. It's a load of crap. So anyway, let's get started with how this fat burning zone actually came about. The fat burning zone is when you are training between 55 to 65% of your maximum heart rate. It's effectively a pretty low intensity workout. You won't be out of breath. It's like a fast walk, maybe a slow jog if you've got a decent level of fitness. Right? Now, the fat burning zone suggests that when you train within this level of intensity, you are burning more fat, and it is the best level of intensity to burn fat tissue. That's baloney. I'll say it right now. That is not worth thinking about. But it's come about from misinformation and a misunderstanding of how the fat burning zone actually works. So where this came about originally was that when we train at a lower level of intensity, we actually utilize more fat relative to carbohydrate as a source of energy. Reason why is because fat is a very slow to break down tissue. So we use fat whenever we're doing like endurance work. So it's slow to break down, it's a long sustained source of energy, whereas carbohydrate gives us a burst of energy, and we utilize carbohydrate much more effectively in a higher intensity workout. So it's true that we use fat relative to carbohydrate at a much higher level at a lower level of intensity. Whereas if we bump the intensity up, we'll start using a lot more carbohydrate and a lot less fat relative to the amount of carbohydrate. But that's relative, so that's when we're comparing the two. Let's consider the absolute amount. So for an example, I'll just consult my notes here. We've got a 60-minute session. Now, at a lower level of intensity, let's assume that we burn 480 calories for 60 minutes. Okay? Let's also assume that we use 50% fat and 50% carbohydrate because there's going to be a fairly even ratio there. Now, the amount of fat that is burnt during that period of time will equate to 26.6 grams. Okay, 26.6 grams. Now we bump the intensity up. Let's say we train same for an hour, but at a higher intensity. So we increase the level of intensity by about 20%, train at about 70% of our maximum heart rate. We're going to start using 40% fat, 60% carbohydrate. Now, in relative terms, we've started using less fat, but the total amount of fat that you will burn during that time would equate to 29.3 grams if you were to burn about 660 calories. Now that's an important note there. You're burning more fat tissue, but you're only burning 40% compared to 50% fat. Now this is where this whole myth came about, is because of the percentages. Let's look at some of the research because where the science lies suggests that higher levels of intensity are far more effective than lower levels of intensity for burning fat. Now, I'm going to go over to a study done in, where are we? 1994, Tremblay. He had a study here. He had two groups, an exercise endurance group and he had a HIIT group, or a high intensity interval training group. Now, the endurance group trained between 30 to 45 minutes. They found that the expenditure of energy during that exercise was 2 times relative to the interval group. So The interval group were doing 10 to 15 minutes. The endurance group were doing 30 to 45 minutes. The endurance group would expend about 2 times more energy during that exercise session. But the amount of fat burnt overall was 9 times greater, the amount of energy expended overall was 9 times greater in the interval session than it was during the endurance session. How can that be? Now, this is because of a higher level of intensity and what it results in after the workout is actually completed. You see, when you're training at a lower level of intensity, such as burning the fat burning zone per se, when you're training at that lower level, you don't place much stress on your body. So after the workout, sure, your body has to recover a little bit, but there isn't much additional energy burnt because you can recover fairly easily. Whereas if you train at a much higher level of intensity, then you place a lot of physical stress on your body. Not only are you absolutely exhausted during the session, but afterwards your body is put into overdrive and you are burning more and more and more calories. That means you're going to be burning a lot of fat too. So that's why a higher level of intensity is so much more effective, not only during your session, but after your session too. Now, going back to that example, there was twice as many calories burnt during the actual session, but keep in mind, the session of the endurance group was 30 to 45 minutes. The interval group was 10 to 15 minutes. Imagine if you sustained that same level of intensity for a longer period of time, you'd not only be burning just as many calories or more calories during your workout, you'd be burning even more calories after your workout. Now, that was an endurance group versus an interval group. And that's where the interval group was effectively doing intervals. So that would be a short period, like a recovery period, and then a sprint, and then another recovery period, and a sprint again. And that resulted in a significant more number of calories burnt. Let's also look at another study now. Now, this other study was by Tabata in 1996. And they compared 2 groups. One group was training at a 70% VO2 max. So that's at a moderate intensity. And they were training for about 60 minutes. So an intensity that you could maintain for about 60 minutes is, you'll probably start to lose your breath, but it's a bit of an endurance session. And that was compared to a high intensity group. Now, they only trained for 4 minutes at a 170% of VO2. So super high intensity training to pretty much your maximum capacity. Now, the benefit of the cardiovascular fitness in the lower intensity group was next to nothing. The benefit of the cardiovascular fitness in the higher intensity group was 28%. So what this suggests now is not only a higher intensity burns a significant more amount of energy and fat tissue, but you also experience a significant cardiovascular fitness improvement too at a higher level of intensity. So let's just go back and quickly review. First of all, the fat burning zone is it's an easier workout. You're going to be burning more fat relative to carbohydrate, but you're not going to be burning more fat in total. When you are exercising at a higher level of intensity, you will be burning significantly more calories or kilojoules. So much more energy is being burnt and fat tissue is being broken down. But the majority of fat tissue is broken down after your workout when your body is recovering from that workout. And then thirdly, you also become a lot fitter when you're training at a much higher level of intensity. The reason being because you're putting a lot more stress on your body. So your body needs to recuperate, and effectively your body goes, well, I've just been hit with a really intense workout. It's been really demanding. I'm going to recover. I'm going to become fitter so I can handle that workload more effectively in my next workout. And that's all part of the recovery process and how we become fitter. Okay, so the fat burning zone, hopefully I've convinced you that it's garbage. But there are some guidelines here which I would like to point out. First of all, if you have never exercised before, or if you have any medical conditions, or if you are particularly unfit or particularly overweight, then high intensity workouts may not be suitable for you. High intensity workouts put a lot of physical stress on your body. So, first of all, you should always check with a doctor before training. But it may be best to start off at a lower intensity, build up your endurance capacity, build up your aerobic capacity, become a little bit fitter, and then gradually start to increase the level of intensity. If you're starting from scratch, going straight into overdrive with your workouts can put a massive amount of stress on your body. It can compromise your immune system, can result in overtraining and recovery as well. So be careful and always make sure that you step it up. However, if you've been training for a while and you've been doing plenty of endurance work and you've already got a good level of aerobic fitness, throw in some intervals. Start testing the limits and increasing that level of intensity. Good way to increase the level of intensity is to put in intervals. So what you do, you have a recovery period and then you have a sprint period. Then you recover from that recover from the sprint and then do another sprint period. Now, the period of time that each of these can be variable. Let's say you're just starting off with intervals. You may want to have a 90-second recovery period and then go with a 30-second sprint and then recover for 90 seconds and then do a 30-second sprint. If you're a bit fitter, you might want to drop that down to 60-second recovery periods and 30-second sprints. And then once you get good at that, you can play it up. So you can do 30 seconds off, 30 seconds on, or 20-second sprint and a 40-second recovery. Play around with it. Keep variety in your workout in order to keep that intensity level up there. So that's a pretty good overview, I hope, of interval training and the fat burning zone. Don't get sucked into that fat burning zone. And next time you hear about it, make sure you tell them about the research that's out there and that there is just so much misinformation and it's so easy to misinterpret why the fat burning zone is not really, well, is effective, but it really isn't. I'm Jay from AminoZ. I hope this has been of value.